I still remember the exact sound my keys made hitting the floor that Tuesday evening. I'd just gotten back from a 3-day work conference, exhausted but excited to collapse on my couch with takeout and catch up on my shows. The front door swung open, and I stepped into what felt like a completely different apartment. My living room was empty. Not messy empty, actually empty. The couch where I'd spent countless Sunday mornings with coffee and books, gone. My grandmother's antique coffee table that I'd inherited and treasured for 5 years, vanished. Even my TV stand and the 65-inch television I'd saved months to buy were nowhere to be seen. I stood there frozen, my suitcase still in my hand, trying to process what I was seeing. My first thought was that I'd somehow walked into the wrong apartment. But no, there were my kitchen magnets on the refrigerator, my mail scattered on the counter exactly where I'd left it. My heart started pounding as I rushed through each room. My bedroom dresser gone, the jewelry box my mother gave me for my birthday missing. Even my winter coats had been stripped from the closet. Whoever did this hadn't just taken a few valuable items, they'd systematically cleaned out anything worth selling. I sank onto the floor in my empty bedroom, my mind racing through possibilities. A break-in seemed obvious, but there were no signs of forced entry. No broken windows, no damaged locks. Whoever had done this had a key, had known exactly when I'd be away, and had taken their time selecting what to steal. The violation felt deeper than just missing possessions. Someone I trusted had betrayed me in the most intimate way possible. They'd invaded my sanctuary and stripped it bare while I was gone. The truth hit me like a physical blow when Mrs. Chen, from next door, knocked on my open apartment door. She'd seen me standing there in shock and came to check if everything was okay. What she told me made my stomach drop to the floor. "Oh, honey, I saw your sister here yesterday with some men in a truck," she said. Her elderly face creased with concern. "I thought you knew. She had keys and everything. Said you were moving some furniture to storage while you were away." Emma, my own sister Emma, had done this to me. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Mrs. Chen kept talking, describing how Emma had directed the movers, how she'd seemed so casual and confident, how she'd even waved at Mrs. Chen like it was the most normal thing in the world. But her words started to sound distant and muffled as the reality crashed over me. My sister, the person I'd trusted with my spare key for emergencies, who I'd helped through her divorce, who I'd lent money to more times than I could count, had systematically robbed me blind. I managed to thank Mrs. Chen and close the door before the tears started. Not just tears of sadness, but of complete bewilderment. How could Emma do this to me? We'd had our differences over the years, sure, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. This wasn't borrowing $20 and forgetting to pay it back. This was calculated, deliberate theft. I called the building's property manager with shaking hands, and 20 minutes later, I was staring at security footage that confirmed my worst fears. There was Emma, clear as day, letting herself into my apartment with my spare key. There she was again, directing 2 men as they carried out my couch, my dresser, my grandmother's coffee table. The betrayal cut deeper than the actual theft. Material things could be replaced, but the trust I'd had in my own family felt shattered beyond repair. How do you process the fact that your own sister saw you as nothing more than a target? Sitting in my empty apartment, the memories started flooding back like pieces of a puzzle I'd been too blind to see. Emma had always been a taker, but I'd spent years making excuses for her behavior, convincing myself it was just her way of showing love or that she was going through a rough patch. When we were teenagers, she'd borrow my clothes without asking and return them stained or torn. I'd find my favorite sweater in her room, reeking of cigarettes, and she'd shrug it off with, "I thought you wouldn't mind." Our parents always told me to be understanding because Emma was going through a phase. In college, she'd show up at my dorm unannounced and eat my groceries, use my textbooks without permission, even take my car keys when I was sleeping to go to parties. When I confronted her, she'd turn it around on me, saying I was being selfish and that family should share everything. The pattern continued into adulthood. She'd ask to borrow money for rent, then spend it on designer handbags. She'd use my credit card just for emergencies and rack up hundreds in charges. When I got my first apartment, she'd let herself in with the spare key I'd given her and help herself to whatever she needed. My food, my clothes, even my makeup. Each time I'd set a boundary, and each time she'd find a way around it or make me feel guilty for even having limits. "You're my sister," she'd say. "Why are you being so uptight about material things?" I'd enabled her for years, always choosing peace over confrontation, always believing her promises that it wouldn't happen again. I'd told myself that keeping the family together was more important than standing up for myself. But this wasn't borrowing a sweater or taking some leftover pizza. This was theft on a massive scale, and I finally saw the truth I'd been avoiding for decades. I called Emma that night, my hands still trembling with rage and disbelief. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice bright and casual like nothing had happened. "Hey, sis, how was your conference?" The audacity of her acting normal made my blood boil. "Emma, where are my things?" There was was a pause, then confusion in her voice that sounded almost genuine. What things? What are you talking about? My furniture, Emma. My couch, my dresser, my grandmother's coffee table. Everything's gone from my apartment. Oh my God, that's terrible. Were you robbed? Did you call the police? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was going to lie to my face even when I had proof. Mrs. Chen saw you, Emma. She watched you direct the movers. I have you on security camera using my key. The silence stretched for what felt like forever. When she finally spoke, her tone had shifted completely. Look, I can explain. I was just trying to help you. Your place was getting so cluttered and I thought, you thought you'd steal everything I own? It's not stealing. We're family. I was going to tell you, but I wanted it to be a surprise. I was having everything cleaned and restored as a gift. The lies kept coming, each one more ridiculous than the last. She claimed she was protecting my things from a water leak she'd heard about. She said she was planning to redecorate my apartment as a welcome home surprise. She even tried to convince me that I'd asked her to do it before I left and had simply forgotten. Emma, stop. Just stop lying to me. I'm not lying. You're being paranoid and hurtful. After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me? You're going to believe some nosy neighbor over your own sister? That's when I realized the depth of her manipulation. She wasn't just denying what she'd done. She was trying to make me feel guilty for confronting her about it. The gaslighting was so smooth, so practiced, that I could see how I'd fallen for it countless times before, but not this time. I hung up on Emma and immediately opened my laptop. If she thought I was going to just accept her lies and move on, she was about to learn how wrong she was. I'd spent years being the passive sister who kept the peace, but something had shifted inside me. This time, I was going to fight back. I started with Facebook Marketplace, typing in descriptions of my most distinctive pieces. Within minutes, I found my grandmother's coffee table listed for $400 by a profile with Emma's maiden name. The photos were clearly taken in what looked like a storage unit, and the posting was from yesterday, the same day Mrs. Chen had seen the movers. My heart pounded as I kept searching. Craigslist revealed my couch listed for $600, and my dresser was on OfferUp for $350. Each listing felt like another knife twist, seeing my personal belongings reduced to quick cash in Emma's hands. I screenshot everything, documenting the seller profiles, the posting times, even the background details in the photos. Then I started calling local pawn shops, describing my TV and jewelry box. The third shop I called confirmed they'd purchased a 65-inch Samsung TV that morning from a woman matching Emma's description. She seemed in a real hurry to sell, the shop owner told me. Had all the original paperwork and everything. Said she was moving out of state. I drove to the pawn shop immediately and showed them my purchase receipt for the TV. The owner was sympathetic but explained they'd need police involvement to return stolen merchandise. That's when I realized this wasn't just about getting my things back anymore. This was about holding Emma accountable for what she'd done. I spent the rest of the night building a case file, printing screenshots, organizing receipts, and documenting every piece of evidence I could find. Emma had been sloppy, probably assuming I'd never fight back. She was about to discover just how much she'd underestimated me. The phone calls started the next morning. First my mother, then my aunt, then my cousin Sarah. Apparently Emma had been busy spinning her version of events to anyone who would listen. Honey, I know you're upset, but Emma says this is all a big misunderstanding, my mother said, her voice carrying that familiar tone of forced diplomacy. She's your sister. Surely you two can work this out without involving outsiders. I tried to explain about the evidence, the security footage, the online listings, but Mom kept interrupting with excuses. Emma's been going through such a hard time since her divorce. Maybe she just made some poor choices, but her heart was in the right place. My aunt called an hour later with the same message. Family is family, sweetheart. Whatever happened, it's not worth destroying your relationship with Emma over some furniture. Things can be replaced, but sisters are forever. The worst call came from my cousin Sarah, who'd always been close to Emma. I can't believe you're being so vindictive, she said, her voice sharp with judgment. Emma told me you're threatening to call the police over a family disagreement. That's just cruel. Each conversation felt like a punch to the gut. They weren't even asking for my side of the story. They'd already decided I was the problem for refusing to just let it go. The family narrative was clear. Emma was troubled but well-meaning, and I was being dramatic and unforgiving. Think about what this will do to Mom, Sarah continued. Do you really want to put her through the stress of having one daughter arrested because the other one can't learn to share? That word, share, made my blood boil. This wasn't about sharing. This was about theft, betrayal, and a lifetime of enabling behavior that had finally gone too far. But their words planted seeds of doubt. Was I overreacting? Was keeping the family together more important than standing up for myself? The pressure was overwhelming, and I could feel myself starting to waver. Then I looked around my empty apartment and remembered how it felt to be violated by someone I trusted completely. I stared at my phone for what felt like hours, my family's voices echoing in my head. Part of me wanted to take the easy path, to call Emma and pretend this never happened, to go back to being the peacekeeper who swallowed her pain to keep everyone else comfortable. But then I walked through my empty apartment one more time, and something crystallized inside me. This wasn't just about furniture or money. This was about my right to exist without being victimized by the people who were supposed to love me most. I picked up my phone and dialed. 1. I need to report a theft, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. The officer who arrived was professional and thorough. Detective Martinez listened as I walked her through everything: the missing items, the security footage, the online listings, Emma's lies. She took notes carefully, asking clarifying questions that showed she understood the gravity of what had happened. This isn't uncommon, she said gently. Family theft cases are some of the hardest to prosecute because victims often feel pressured to drop charges. But what your sister did is a felony. The value of the stolen items puts this in serious territory. As I signed the official complaint, my hand shook slightly. I knew there was no going back from this moment. Filing this report meant choosing myself over family harmony, choosing justice over keeping the peace. Are you sure you want to proceed? Detective Martinez asked, giving me one last chance to change my mind. I thought about my grandmother's coffee table, about years of boundary violations, about Emma's casual lies and my family's willingness to sacrifice my well-being for their comfort. Yes, I said firmly. I'm sure. For the first time in my life, I was putting my own needs first, and it felt both terrifying and liberating. Detective Martinez called me 3 days later. We have enough evidence for an arrest warrant, she said. We'll be executing it this afternoon. I wanted to give you a heads up. I wasn't prepared for how I'd feel when that moment actually came. Part of me had expected Emma to somehow talk her way out of it, to charm the police like she'd charmed our family for years. But the evidence was overwhelming. The security footage, the online listings, the pawn shop records. There was no talking her way out of this. I found myself driving to Emma's neighborhood that afternoon, not really knowing why. I parked across the street from her apartment complex and waited, my heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and dread. When the police cars pulled up, it felt surreal. 2 officers walked up to Emma's door with purpose, their presence commanding and official. I watched from my car as they knocked, waited, then knocked again more firmly. Emma opened the door in her pajamas, and even from a distance, I could see the exact moment she realized what was happening. Her casual confidence crumbled instantly. She stepped back, shaking her head, her hands gesturing frantically as she spoke to the officers. One of the officers held up what looked like paperwork, the warrant. Emma's shoulders sagged in defeat. She disappeared inside for a few minutes, probably getting dressed, then emerged with her hands behind her back. Watching my sister get handcuffed was one of the most complicated moments of my life. There was satisfaction, yes, finally consequences for her actions. But there was also grief for the relationship we'd never really had, for the sister I'd always hoped she could be. As the police car drove away with Emma in the back seat, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years when it came to my family: peace. Not happiness, not vindication, but a quiet sense that justice had been served. For once, actions had consequences, and the person who'd been hurt wasn't the one being asked to just get over it. The fallout was swift and brutal. Within hours of Emma's arrest, my phone exploded with angry calls and texts from family members. My mother was hysterical, sobbing about how I'd destroyed the family. My aunt left a voicemail calling me vindictive and cruel. Even cousins I barely spoke to reached out to tell me I'd gone too far. How could you do this to your own sister? My mother demanded when I finally answered her call. She's sitting in jail because of you. Are you happy now? The guilt was overwhelming at first. I'd been conditioned my entire life to prioritize family harmony over my own well-being, and every angry voice felt like confirmation that I was the villain in this story. Maybe I should have just let it go. Maybe I was being petty and vindictive. But then I remembered something Detective Martinez had told me. Theft is theft, regardless of who does it. Family members don't get a free pass to victimize each other. The hardest part was losing relationships I'd valued. My cousin Sarah stopped speaking to me entirely. Family gatherings became awkward affairs where I was either uninvited or treated like a pariah. Some relatives acted like I'd committed the crime, not Emma. But something unexpected happened in the midst of all that rejection. I started sleeping better than I had in years. The constant anxiety I'd carried about Emma's next boundary violation was gone. I wasn't walking on eggshells anymore, wondering what she'd take or how she'd manipulate me next. A few family members quietly reached out to support me. My uncle admitted he'd always thought Emma was trouble. My grandmother's sister told me she was proud of me for standing up for myself. Realized that some bridges are worth burning when they only lead to places that hurt you. Protecting toxic people isn't loyalty, it's enabling. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my fully furnished furnished apartment, everything replaced and better than before. Emma pled guilty to felony theft and received probation, community service, and an order to pay restitution. She's slowly paying me back, though we haven't spoken since the trial. The family dynamics have permanently shifted. Some relationships didn't survive my decision to press charges, and honestly, I'm okay with that. The people who expected me to absorb abuse for the sake of family unity weren't really on my side anyway, but I've also discovered something powerful: my voice. For 32 years, I'd been the accommodating sister, the one who kept the peace at any cost. I'd confused being a doormat with being loving, mistaken enabling for loyalty. Learning to set boundaries has been life-changing. I've started saying no without elaborate explanations. I've stopped lending money to people who never pay it back. I've realized that people who truly care about you don't ask you to sacrifice your well-being for their comfort. The most surprising thing? I'm happier. Yes, some family relationships are strained, but the ones that remain are healthier and more authentic. I'm no longer carrying the exhausting burden of managing everyone else's emotions while ignoring my own needs. If you're reading this and recognizing yourself in my story, please know this: you deserve to be treated with respect, even by family, especially by family. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's destructive behavior. Your peace of mind is worth more than keeping toxic people comfortable. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful revenge stories. And if you've ever faced betrayal or family drama, feel free to share your story in the comments, because your voice matters here.